Number 1. I was 18 years old at the time of this story, and it was a few months after I graduated high school. College was on the way, and I was excited to go and get the independence I so desperately needed. Despite how excited I was to go to college, I was also sad because I was single. I never really had much luck with women, and the closest thing I had to a relationship was in sophomore year of high school. A mutual friend of mine and I went out once, and just spent about 2 hours quietly eating while awkwardly making eye contact. I know. Sad. Anyway, a few of my friends had girlfriends at the time, and my close friend Ben suggested I try Tinder. I didn't really see the harm in it, so I installed the app and set up my profile. I wrote down all my interests and hobbies, and put in a few of the most flattering pictures of me that I could find. I also wrote down what I wanted in a girl. I wanted someone who was confident in herself, and to have at least 3 common interests with me. After a few days without a notification, I kind of forgot about it. After about a week, I got a message from Tinder saying I received a match. I excitedly opened the app and looked. I was matched with a beautiful brunette girl. Her name was Amanda, and she was 19 years old. To my delight, she lived in the next town over from me. We started talking, and she seemed very sweet and flirty. We shared a few interests, and it was easy for me to start a conversation with her. We would talk long into the night about our interests. I had never felt happier in my life at that time. After 2 months of talking to her, I finally worked up the courage to ask Amanda out to dinner. She excitedly accepted, and we arranged to meet up that Saturday evening. Saturday night rolls around, and I was very nervous. I freshened up and took my mother's car — yes, I didn't have a car at the time — to the restaurant. I pulled into the parking lot and sat in my car for a minute, mentally preparing myself. I then received a text from her telling me that she was about to pull in. I looked around and saw a white sedan enter the lot. I therefore assumed that was her, and texted her asking if she was in the sedan. She didn't respond. The car parked a few spots away from me, and I waited for her to get out so I could join her. She didn't get out for a few minutes, and I thought it was because she didn't know which car was mine. So I got out of my car and stood next to the door. A few seconds later, the sedan's door opened, and a 60-something balding guy stepped out. He gave me a blank look, and then waved at me. I awkwardly waved back, thinking that I must have seen the wrong car. The guy took a step toward me, and told me that he was Amanda's father, and that she was in the back seat. He said that she wanted me to get inside, and we could go for a ride together. Alarms quickly went off in my head, and I told the guy that I didn't want to get in the car. The guy started slowly walking toward me, all the while trying to coax me toward the car. At that point, I glanced at the car, and through the tinted windows, I could see 2 figures in the back seat, staring right at me. I quickly got back in my car and pulled away. The guy started running at my car, and when I pulled into the street, I saw the white sedan following me close behind. I pulled into the suburban streets and made a bunch of sharp twists and turns trying to lose them. Eventually I lost them and started making my way back home. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a few minutes, reflecting, when I heard my phone buzz. I looked, and it was a message from Amanda. It said, "You're lucky you got away, you little weasel." I replied saying, "Thank you for the threat, it's going straight to the police." I then saved the conversation and blocked the number. After telling my story to the cops, I deactivated my Tinder account. Nothing has happened since, and I'm glad I got out of there with my life. I will never use Tinder again. Number 2. I was in the living room around 11 p.m. on a Saturday browsing Tinder. 4 weeks prior to this story, I had broken up with my girlfriend of 10 years. I found out she was cheating on me with a friend from college, and I was a complete wreck because of it. For a few weeks, I was completely depressed. I stopped eating, had trouble sleeping, stopped going out with friends, and spent most of my time cooped up in my room on my computer. Eventually, I decided that I had to pull myself together and get back into the dating scene. That brings us to the night in question. I was browsing Tinder in the living room, seeing who I could possibly hook up with. I swiped right on all the women I found attractive and tried talking to some of them, but I wasn't really getting anywhere. I was about to give up when I received a message from someone. The message was from a pretty blonde woman named Caroline. She was 23 years old, 2 years younger than me at the time, and she lived a few towns away from me. Things went very smooth between us, and after a few hours of talking, she asked if I wanted to meet up the following weekend. I said sure, and she set up a time and place for us to meet. She wanted to meet me in an urban park in her hometown to chat in person. I was fine with that, so I asked for her number, and that was that. The following week, I got ready to go over to the park. Before I left, I received a text from Caroline telling me that she wanted me to come over to her house and pick her up. The message was followed with her address. It seemed a bit sketchy, but no red flags were going off at that moment. I texted back saying fine and got in my car. I put her address into my GPS and drove the half hour to her house. When I pulled into her driveway, I was very nervous about meeting this person. Nevertheless, I got out of the car and walked up to her door and knocked on it. She opened the door, and I was immediately relieved, as she was the same girl from the Tinder account. We got back into my car and drove to the park. We sat down on a bench and started talking. She proceeded to tell me that the reason she wanted me to pick her up was because she was having problems with her ex-boyfriend. Apparently, her ex was very abusive toward her, and when she left, he proceeded to stalk her. She told me that he would call and text her relentlessly, and sometimes he would show up at her house unannounced at 3 a.m, either begging for her to come back to him or screaming profanities and threatening to kill her and her family. I gave her my condolences and jokingly promised that I'd kick the guy's butt if I saw him. She giggled, and we continued our conversation. We were sitting on a bench facing a big lake in the middle of the park. Directly in front of the bench was a meandering dirt path that goes around the entire park. The park is littered with lots of trees and natural underbrush. Anyways, about an hour into our sitting there, we heard a twig snap a few feet away. We looked, but couldn't see anyone. I should mention that it was around 10 at night, and there was no one else in the park. We just assumed it to be an animal or something. A few minutes later, we heard another sound coming from a tree a few feet to our right. There was a figure clearly poking his head out from behind the tree. He seemed to be wearing a black hoodie and sunglasses. Caroline then screamed, "That's my ex!" I didn't catch on at first, but then the guy suddenly ran toward us while holding a butcher knife. We jumped up and ran as fast as we could away from him. Fortunately, we were running in the direction of the parking lot, and we legged it to my car and sprinted into it. As I started the car, the guy jumped onto the hood of my car and tried to stab the windshield with the knife. The glass started to crack, and I didn't know how much time we had before the glass shattered. I threw the car into reverse, and when I drove out of the parking spot, the guy fell off the hood and ran back into the park. I drove away from the park before pulling over to collect my thoughts. I asked Caroline what made her think it was him, and she said she recognized the black hoodie he always wore whenever she saw him. She was afraid to go to her house, since she figured he might be there waiting, so I suggested that she come home with me. She agreed, and we drove back to my house, going the scenic route just to make sure we weren't being tailed. We successfully made it to my house without being followed, and Caroline slept in the guest room. The next morning, we called the police and told them what happened. Caroline then gave the police a description of her ex, and the cops said they'd keep an eye out for him. They found him the same day, hiding in the bushes just in front of Caroline's front door with a loaded shotgun. He was arrested pretty much immediately. Caroline and I continued to see each other, and now, 5 years later, we are married and have a 3-year-old. I am in a good position in life, both mentally and emotionally right now, and I hope that doesn't change anytime soon. So, to the ex-boyfriend of my now wife who tried to kill us, have fun in prison. Send me a postcard. What's up, everybody? This is the Lone Wolf here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed these 2 Tinder stories. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications, and join the Lone Wolf Pack. If you guys want to send me a message, I will leave a link in the description for my Gmail account, so if you have any personal scary stories you want to share with me, or any creepypastas you want me to read, go ahead and leave me a recommendation, and I'll use it in a future video. If you're interested in music, I will also leave links in the description for the artists that I use, as well as the specific tracks, in case you want to listen to them for yourself. And of course, if you have any constructive criticism, feel free to leave me a comment. I'm always looking for new ways to make this channel even better, and all ideas are welcome. Until next time, you guys, stay spooky. And remember, the hunt begins when the moon is full. See you soon.